everybody, welcome back to the 4th volume of RWBY and my rambling reaction reviews. Now, I know I've done a couple of RWBY videos already leading up to this, but this is the first episode. This is what all the hype has been inevitably leading us to, and we're finally here. The hiatus is over, people. So, without any further delay, let's get right to it. RWBY Volume 4, Episode 1, The Next Step. Scene 1, Salems Council. Interestingly enough, our first scene of Volume 4 starts us in the same location as the last scene in Volume 3. But what we didn't know then is this place is literally the Grimm's spawning grounds. As the camera pulls back, we see a stream of Grimm, each coming out of a different pool with more following after them with no end in sight. Almost like bloody zerglings from StarCraft, and it's an endless stream of them. Holy crap. Now, I know I said this at the beginning of last Volume 2, but would you look at the visual improvements? The new Beowulfs, while impressive themselves, we've already seen them. I'm talking the spawning pools themselves. Watch how the liquid drips off them in pools on the ground. Not like water, but more like how liquid mercury would. Also, the reflections on that liquid. It's not just the pools themselves. That can be easily faked, but it's the liquid as it covers the Beowulfs, even as it overflows slightly from the pool as they crawl out. The reflection just follows it all. It goes to show the extra rendering power that they now have after switching to Maya. This, all paired with some ominous but beautiful violin music in the background. The shot pans out, showing us that this is all just Mercury and Emerald's perspective, looking down from whatever evil meeting place they are in. But the pan up to reveal that it's actually just a reflection of the glass window they are looking through. It's just such a wonderfully planned out jib shot. And the reflection reveal at the end is that little cherry on top of the icing that is the horrified faces when the reflection reveals that it's them. Well, Emerald is kind of more horrified. Mercury kind of looks like he's just ticked off at the idea of being in the home of the Grimm. Okay, now that I'm done gushing over the new visual effects, let's look at some of the story bits for this scene. First of all, we have 3 new villains that are part of Salem's Legion of Doom, and they seem to be on the same level, if maybe a bit higher than Cinder, in a way. Like most congregating villains, they don't get along. Mostly in this case, they're all criticizing Cinder on her defeat. Cinder looks like RWBY went all Firelord Sozin on her, leaving her with a nastier than Zuko scar on her face, and missing an eye. But that's not all. Cinder has a new outfit, and it's not just because she wants to look nice for her boss. Her entire left side is covered from her legs, which is just kind of a side skirt, because we see slightly in another scene that it's actually just like one of those sort of slit dresses. So she's trying to specifically hide that left leg. And also her hand is covered with a sleeve that goes even further over her hand, almost like a full couple of inches, all just hiding that possible damage that was left there by RWBY. Take note, cosplayers, make sure you have it on the right side.
The scar's not on the wrong side!
To top it all off, Cinder doesn't even have her voice anymore and needs to whisper everything to Emerald so she can talk for her. Now, the most outspoken of the 3 new villains, Dr. Watts. He is a thin, older gentleman, a rather cynical Brit by nature, it seems. Very cynical of Cinder and her posse, as he calls them. It is very obviously that he does not think highly of them or Cinder, especially after losing to RWBY, which he sees as a failing on Cinder's part. Now, even though Salem calls him Dr. Watts, I think he's more like an evil doctor, like, Dr. Evil, so he's more of a scientist. And also, his name Watts. Come on, Watts. Watts is a unit of power, as in the DeLorean needs 1.21 gigawatts. He also has a personalized scroll that I haven't seen anywhere else. So this leads me to believe that he is probably a gadget user, because I bet he designed that scroll himself with maybe an electric personality. All right, electric semblance. Moving on, we have the quiet and somber Hazel. Not much to note about him yet. He is the calmest and least spoken of the group, aside from Cinder. This leads me to believe he is probably the strongest physically of the four. Just personality-wise, it kind of gives me that hint. He mentions that the silver-eyed warriors have not been a problem in the past, leaving me to believe that himself and possibly the others have fought with them in the past. But if Summer Rose was the last one we knew about recently, and he's talking about them as in plural, as in multiples, then exactly how old are Hazel and the others on this council? Lastly, of the new villains, we have Tyrion. He's batshit crazy, and I love that about him. I just gotta start out with that. He is the perfect cross of Ling Yao, or Greed, from Full Metal Alchemist, and Ed the Hyena from The Lion King. From his stature and the way he kind of sits there, he's probably the martial arts master of the group, and probably what he doesn't have in strength, or maybe even power, he makes up with skill and craziness.
Hey, shut up!
Lastly, someone we've already met, the leader of the Legion of Doom, Salem. A few notes on her, just visually. As she walks into the room, everyone stops their bickering immediately and stands at attention. You can tell that the second she walks in that room, respect is demanded. And her lackeys, not even Watts, the one that's so cynical towards Cinder, says a word out of line to Salem. She is not above being in the same room with her minions, but she definitely is something more than what they are. Notice also, as she walks into the room, you can kind of see the path behind her is emanating the same sort of black mist or miasma that emanates from the Grim. One last thing that Salem said before we move on. When talking about Cinder's success in defeating Ospin, she refers to him as Dear Ospin. This one line gets me thinking and possibly reveals several things. One possibility is that their fight with Ospin has been going on for quite a while. Not just Salem herself, but the rest of the group. This might have been a sort of initiation for Cinder, I believe. Getting rid of their most dangerous foe, Cinder, the youngest of them. And I believe that Cinder is possibly most likely the youngest of the group. Making it her job to take him out must have been some sort of initiation. But there might be another reason why Dear Ospin was used this way. And I'm going to go out on a limb here. This is crazy crackpot theory. Ospin was possibly once part of this Council of Doom. Think of it. Both Salem and Cinder talk as if they knew Ospin personally, calling him so arrogant. And Salem's speech at the end, it's so almost personal to Ospin. Same with the whole Dear Ospin thing we had just right now. So if you think of it, Cinder might actually be Ospin's replacement after he defected. Think of it kind of as a way as an evil organization having strict punishments for defectors. And Cinder's initiation was at the same time Ospin's punishment. I can imagine Salem's orders being to Cinder, destroy him and everything he loves. And the seat on the council that was once his is now yours. Well, everything he once loved was Beacon, and he has said before that he has made mistakes, more mistakes than anyone else. But again, that's only a theory. So during this meeting, a few more things to note. Hazel is to deal with the White Fang, and Dr. Watts is to take over for Cinder and meet with their contact in Mistral. the same place RWBY and crew are heading, so there's a chance at least him and Tyrion might have some confrontations with them there. Also, the main reason that Cinder is taken off this case, and the reason why she was so badly hurt, according to Salem, is that apparently maidens are weak to Silver-Eyed Warrior's powers, so she is at a disadvantage. Thus, she gives Mr. Giggles, Tyrion, the job of hunting down RWBY, although, before that, he was supposed to be the one hunting down the Spring Maiden, but instead told to hunt down RWBY first, alive. This discussion between him and her leads to the best range of facial expressions that I've seen in a villain since the 2016 presidential debates. Scene 2. The Farm. I need transition here from Tyrion's maniacal laugh to this farm boy waking up with a start, as if it was all just a bad dream. At first glance, the scene is rather out of place, but beautiful nonetheless. It's early morning, the sun is rising, we see some beautiful light shafts coming through the window of the barn. Also notice a bit of the detail in the window there. Nice touch. Oh, and if anyone is wondering what that barrel thing is that he's cranking after the water pump scene, it's a compost tumbler. Many of you probably have used a compost bin that's just built in the ground. Well, this one works similarly, but faster. Now, what does this farmer and this farm have to do with anything? Well, one of the last subjects talked about in the previous scene was Tyrion's hunt for the Spring Maiden. Then we immediately go into this scene for seemingly no reason. Oh, but there is a reason. Theory time! My theory is that the farmer is actually the Spring Maiden. Him, or her, waking up with a start from Tyrion's maniacal laugh is foreshadowing of their eventual confrontation. And a little more evidence to sprinkle on this theory. Remember the World of Remnant last volume about the maidens? The Spring Maiden was the farmer. That's what she does. She grew the crops for them. Now, what does this mean in this case? Possibly, this farmer is just a tomboy, or is purposely hiding who she is because she knows bad people are hunting the maidens. So it makes sense to hide as a boy because obviously they're looking for girls, which is exactly what happened with Princess Ozma in The Wizard of Oz. Princess Ozma was disguised as a boy using magic to hide her as Pip, and Pip grew up with the witch Mombi. Scene 3, the Geist Fight. Here we finally get to see our characters Team Ranger, or Team Junior, as Nora would like the team called now. This nod to the fans is perfect, and it had me laughing just as hard, if not harder, than the shipping names nod that they did with Arcos at the beginning of Season 3. So, finally we get to see the redesigns of the rest of Team Ranger, already seeing RWBY's in the character short, but since the scene starts with Nora and Ren, let's talk about them first. Nora. Out of all the redesigns that I've seen so far in this episode, I think I like hers the most. It's not as drastic as a change, but the changes made suit her, and it makes her look awesome overall. Her whole outfit screams 1950s Americana, with the short cut poodle skirt and the tall lace-up boots, to my favorite piece of the whole thing, the pink bomber jacket, almost as if she was going to the roller skating rink for a derby. This is, her being my favorite is just my personal preference, probably because as a kid when growing up, I watched a lot of Grease and Crybaby and Back to the Future, so there's a lot of movies there that has a lot of 1950s fashion when I was young, so I instantly recognized that style. Ren looks much more mature. His old outfit looked more like what a student in a dojo would wear, and his new one seems more like a full-on ninja than student as the old one did. I particularly like the fact that he has the open-toed shoes going on, kind of like in Naruto. And to be honest, I don't know if that's like a legit thing that ninjas are supposed to wear. It's just all I've seen in Naruto, so whatever. I think his two biggest changes are his hair. It's long. Like, Ruby and Norris' hair has gone a little bit longer, but like, his is like L'Oreal model jealous long. Also, his jacket and his boots have some really nice embroidery on there. I'm not sure if that's actually like a really thick leather there or maybe even metallic, but either way, it looks really good. Now, RWBY, I've already covered in the character video short, so I'm just going to kind of quickly reiterate that for me, it's all about that battle-torn cape. God, I love that cape. And I'm not sure if I mentioned it before, but I love also the fact that RWBY no longer is in that one-piece dress. She's now in like a three-piece separate like blouse, corset, and skirt, all separate. It makes her seem more mature, like she actually picked out this wardrobe for herself. And it's not just like some party pageant school uniform dress that her parents left on the bed for her to put on in the morning. Not to harp too much on the old one, but in comparison, it's kind of immature. But in reality, it really does symbolize that she is growing up. And so now the more mature look really suits her well. Lastly, we have Jean, who went into this fight without his weapon. Let's talk about him later. Now the fight! Well, I'm going to be honest and say this Golem Geist was actually more interesting than the fight itself. And most of it comes down to the dynamic of the fight. I've never seen a movie or a show where the smaller people fighting a giant flowed well, outside of Attack on Titan. But that's because they are fighting multiple Titans at a time, and they're zipping around so fast, going from Titan to kill to Titan kill to Titan kill. But when you have several characters just attacking one giant, and it's just 4 against 1, and it's drawn out like this, it's just, it kind of, well, as I said, it feels drawn out. And I think the only other way it works is if you're the Power Rangers and summoning Zords into the fighting field. So the pacing for me was a bit off and not as exciting as it could have been, but it was still very interesting. The Golem itself has great design, making something that's just made out of stone look that menacing and supernatural is very imaginative. The molten red fissures that crack all over the body, and the fact that its joints aren't actually completely connected in parts, just sort of floating there, is really cool. And I especially loved how it regenerates its arm, the Geist arm popping out, and let's call it like Salem's eye sigil. It pops out of the sigil to grab the tree trunk and just adds it to itself. It gives it that dark, supernatural, grim feeling that I keep talking about. Even when defeated, the Golem, this Geist pops out of the stone with this ghostly form, yet still with the skeletal accents on the front that most Grim have. And the mask being its weakness is another nice touch. Again, reminding me of Hollows from Bleach. After this fight, to be quite honest, I am so excited to see how many new Grim designs there are out there. Because if this is the beginning, between that and the Baringle, I can't wait to see more. During this fight, we also learned that RWBY now carries several dust types with her, and I think at this point, she might not have a dust shortage, like I presumed in the character short, but I'll cover that idea a little bit later. Ren is also much more active in this fight than he has been in fights past, also much more agile, almost flying through the air at points. Lastly for Ren, he is talking much more. So many lines for Ren. And I think that goes to show that Nithum is finally more comfortable as a voice actor now. He just fits into it so naturally, and I'm so happy to see that. And Jean is basically the strategist trying to dodge all the things being thrown at him and analyze the situation as it goes on and giving everyone orders. Even though he's not fighting, it really goes to show that he is, even though RWBY's like the lead of the show, Jean really is the leader. He is the strategist. He is the one that's going to think of the best solution to any fight. And this fight right here just proves that. He is also the one that figures out that the mask on the Geist is the Golem's weakness. Norris Menghild has also had an upgrade. It's not a visual one. It's more just like a charged attack represented by electricity flowing over the hammer. Nora also is still the heavy hitter, but not on her own. This time, she has some teamwork with RWBY for the big hit on the golem near the end. This is something new for her. She is usually that tank just taking out the trash on her own, but doing combo attacks now with RWBY, that was my favorite part of the fight too. Like, it really goes to show that she is so much more a team player because, as I said before, she just did shit on her own a lot of times, kind of like Yang. But in this fight, her kind of melding in with RWBY's cape physics comboed to see that pink and red spiral attack at the end. That was amazing. So, in the end, they destroy the golem and force the Geist out in the open, where RWBY then snipes the mask, ending the fight. And Jean solidifies the team's name as Ranger, finally. Scene 4. The Village Blacksmith. Here we learn that Team Ranger was actually contracted out by the village to deal with the Geist, in return for the blacksmith doing some work for them. The village elder also informs us that even though it's dangerous where they live, they would rather stay where they are than try to travel across Animea, as it is too large of a continent to traverse safely to get to the safety of one of the kingdoms. On to my now second most memorable new character this episode, just below Tyrion, the nameless Blacksmith Bonus. Really now, for a one-shot character, this guy has so much personality and design uniqueness to him that it is a shame that he is probably just a one-shot character. He almost kind of reminds me of Tuscan, the bookshop owner from Volume 2? Yes. He, well, had a name, but he also had a business. He had a really nice personality, a little bit generic design, but one and done. At least he had a name, not like Blacksmith Bonus, which is what I'm going to call him from now on. He has the better design overall, and he didn't die. Oh God. Please don't let him die, Rooster Teeth. This is actually the reason why Jean went into the Geist fight without any weapons. Blacksmith Bonus has been working on upgrading them, making Jean also some brand new, thicker armor. It is at this point where Jean takes off his old armor breastplate to reveal the logo underneath on his hoodie. It has been Pumpkin Pete from the cereal box that we saw all those episodes ago in Volume 1, setting off RWBY into hysterical giggles that would make even Tyrion proud. The blacksmith also mentions that it was a fine metal that they brought to him to accent the white of his shield, probably referring to the broken Milos and Akuo. Now his shield has his logo and Pyrrha's circlet design below it. Her weapons and parts of her armor are now in his armor and weapons. And it's a really nice bit of symbolism that way she will always be with him. So, with all of this new armor now, Jean looks more and more like a knight than before as he did as a squire. His sword, also being remade, looks quite badass. Epic loot drop for sure. Now, armored up and ready to go, our heroes are on their way to Shilong Village to try and hitch a ride on an airship, which I hope looks as retro as the ones in the World of Remnant Mistral that just came on. Unfortunately, according to Blacksmith Bonus, no one knows how Shilong Village has been holding up since Beacon Tower went down, since that took out most of the scrolls when it crashed. So, with our heroes, leaving behind my newest favorite side character, they are down the road to adventure, going through their checklist of food, water, ammunition, and possibly a lost map. But most interesting part of this conversation, when John asks about the ammo, Nora pipes up, "Thank you, Snee Dust Company." Why would she say that? There's two reasons for that. Either, which is probably the most realistic reason, Snee Dust Company has the monopoly all over the world for dust ammunition. So you can't buy dust bullets anywhere else. That's the most realistic possibility. Or maybe, just maybe, and again, this is a theory, Weiss being back home with her daddy back at Schnee headquarters is possibly slipping Team Ranger free dust ammo under the table. Talking about Weiss, Scene 5, the Schnee Estate. This is a very quick scene, and it's basically just a setup for the next episode. Weiss is watching ships fly by her window till a butler shows up delivering the message that her father wants to see her. She doesn't actually look too happy about this, gets up and, well, end scene. End episode. That's it. I really don't have too much to say about this scene. So really, that's it. And God, was it a good episode. Again, only 2 complaints overall. The pacing of the Geist fight was a little bit off. And as I said, giant fights, not giant fights, but fights with giants always seem to have an odd pacing. Unless you're Attack on Titan, in which you're like fighting like 12 giants at a time. But the large lumbering ones where it takes 10 people to take down this one giant for like 5 whole minutes, those ones always seem to have bad pacing because they always have to be stretched out to show how damage resistant the giant is. Also, I only noticed one technical error in the whole episode near the end of the blacksmith scene. Nora's wireframe seems to jump out of her body at one point, which is actually something that has happened in a previous volume. I can't remember which episode, but it was back when they were on Poser, funnily enough. But outside of that, great episode. I am so interested and so invested in the story, especially the villains, man, like Dr. Watts, Tyrion, and Hazel. Come on, Hazel seems to be the quiet one, but I bet you he's got something hidden up his sleeve too. Not to mention, like, what are the other upgrades to Jean's weapons? The blacksmith did allude to some, so we still have that to find out. Maybe the Crescent Roses that had upgrades. Weiss's scene was so brief. So what's going to happen there? Is she going to like try to break out, like escape from her father, fight her way out? Or is she going to be kind of like the Relina Peacecraft from like Gundam Wing and try to sort of like politicize, talk her way out, convince her father to go to the side of good? We have Blake as well, which as far as we've seen from the opening, is a pirate. Yar har fiddly dee. Yep. I'm going to go into that one a bit later. And same with Yang, we didn't see anything on her, so like there's still so much to get into. The intro is going to be a separate video. I'm not going to make this video any longer than it already is. I'm going to do a smaller video just on the intro to kind of analyze that, because there's so many different scenes in that intro. I could spend forever talking about it. So, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed, please like and subscribe. Follow me on Twitter and also on Twitch, where I will be doing some Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2 Let's Plays and hopefully some Juniper Grim Eclipse DLC after that. So, until next time, everybody, good night!